Hey everyone, it's Maddie from Novara here and welcome to our week 8 wrap-up video. This week we leave Sisimiut and head north towards Aasiaat and the Disko Bay area, and then out through the Veigat Strait and across to Baffin Island. This is quite a long one. We had about 4 or 5 hours of footage, pretty much on icebergs alone. So I've done it in 2 parts. This is part 1. Hopefully you'll stick around for part 2. From Sisimiut, we headed slightly offshore to avoid the most of the shoaly patches, and then made our way back into the inner lead routes towards Aasiaat, with a quick overnight stop in Kangatsiak because we were running slightly ahead of time and wanted to get into Aasiaat in the daylight. We left Kangatsiak in dense fog, which is really common at this time of year in the fjords, followed by a pack of very inquisitive seals. And as was reported by the motor vessel Sarah, who were about a day ahead of us, we started to see high densities of medium to large icebergs as we approached the Disko Bay area. Lucky it's cleared up there. As we entered the very pretty and colourful outer harbour of the town of Aasiaat, we noticed another yacht at anchor, and this turned out to be the Nordhus, which is owned by Arctic explorers Lonnie Dupree and Pascal Marceau, who we had met earlier in Nuuk. We headed straight into the inner harbour to top up our fuel tanks, which required some very careful manoeuvring in the shallow and very tight harbour. On our way out to the anchorage, we saw the crew of Nordhus rowing back to shore and stopped to invite them to dinner.
We got a stew brewing. We've got, I think we've got steak and onion pie on the menu. Does that sound?
Oh my word! Oh.
Does that sound okay?
That sounds okay.
With the social side of things now taken care of, half of the crew went ashore to explore and also to meet the operators at Aasiaat Radio, who are responsible for managing all commercial marine traffic around West Greenland, as well as maintaining daily contact with private vessels entering the seas to ensure their safety. The other half of the crew took the dinghy to circumnavigate the island in the middle of the harbour. Known in English as Transit Island, it was used by the Americans in World War II as a resupply base, and then as a fish plant for sea-fresh Greenland shrimp. Having been abandoned in the 1980s, the buildings are all derelict and falling down. However, the only thing that was intact and still operational were the traditional fish drying racks out the back of the island. Back on board Novara, we hosted the crew of Nordhus for dinner, and with 2 famous Arctic explorers on board, we thoroughly enjoyed their company and their stories of their time in the area. Leaving Aasiaat, we headed properly into Disko Bay, which was very slow going, noting the number of icebergs in the vicinity, and had a short stop overnight in Marrait. Once again, we woke to a very foggy morning, which quickly cleared up to a beautiful day.
Farewell, Aasiaat.
Farewell, Aasiaat! Our overnight anchorage in Marrait was in a nice shallow bay. This meant that the large icebergs grounded outside the entrance, leaving a very protected bay for us to safely anchor in. The next day promised to be a big one, as we were heading towards the famous township of Ilulissat on the northern side of the Ilulissat Icefjord. As we entered the area immediately surrounding the Ilulissat Icefjord, it was time for Steve Brown, our ice pilot, to really come into his own and show us how to safely navigate through the densely packed ice and the large icebergs. Unfortunately, after a full day of flying both drones, we had a slight imbalance of confidence versus competence and lost one of our drones with a disastrous takeoff manoeuvre under sail. Needing a break, we found a sheltered anchorage and went ashore to see if we could find the edge of the Ilulissat Icefjord and see this famous ice fjord for ourselves. Back on board Novara, we left the sheltered bay and headed back to skirt around the edges of the outflow of the Ilulissat Icefield. Finally clear of the Icefjord's edge, we anchored up off the township of Illulissat and headed ashore. Had a pretty exciting day ahead.
We're going on an aeroplane ride around the UNESCO World Heritage Site of the glaciers.
Woohoo!
Is it UNESCO?
Yeah, absolutely.
UNESCO Icefjord.
Wow.
First stop, however, was to get Andy a decent coffee.
It's the Coke and the smoothie.
Yeah, double caffeine dude.
What do you think of the flat white?
It's alright.
Before Nigel, Veronica and Steve headed to the airport to catch their flight with Air Safari. After a full day of sightseeing, both from the air and on land, it was time to head back to Novara and get ready to head north once more. And it was just in time too, as a few smaller icebergs had drifted into the bay and were now tangled up with Novara and her anchor chain. Trying to move a couple of 100 tons of frozen water out of the way of Novara at anchor. I don't think you're going anywhere. After somewhat successful application of the dinghy's horsepower, Novara was freed, we pulled up the anchor and slowly moved out of the harbour to head north. Hey everyone, thanks for watching part 1 of our week 8 wrap-up video. Keep an eye out for part 2, where we can promise more icebergs, some ancient Norse ruins, and of course our final glimpse of Greenland as we head towards the Northwest Passage.